Aakanksha Chandra, who is the Principal Global Procurement Delivery with GSK. To give you a background, more than 18 years of experience in purchasing and strategy consulting. She is trusted C-suite advisor for procurement transformation and has spearheaded cost reduction program across several industries. She is a digital procurement practitioner and has a deep understanding of how new age digital technologies work. Proficient at managing and leading global teams, Aakanksha is passionate about her work and has been consistent high performer across various organizations she has served.
Transformation project at a leading oil and gas company. Before that, as a consulting person, I was working largely on standalone solutions or even on systems implementations in this particular space. Yeah, and this was the first time about 5 years back, a leading oil and gas company, they wanted to reimagine, redefine procurement and essentially set up digital procurement in the end-to-end space. And I had one of my friends in McKinsey who said that, is it even possible? Because, till that time, we were talking of standalone solutions in different parts of the procurement process. But in that program, the interesting thing was that, we had to deploy digital across each of the processes of end-to-end procurement. And what I mean by that is on the source to contract as well as the procure to pay. But having said that, I'll probably deep dive into some of the aspects later on. But today, as we all know, data is the most valuable commodity. Everybody is wanting to get the insights from the data, and we just heard in the last presenter saying that some of the things are not possible because the data is not where it should be. Having said that, we are in an age now where we have the human plus machine potential which is unleashed, and each has their own role to play in this entire process. If I were to say how things are changing or how I have seen things change is starting straight from the demand side. Yeah, so when I talk about something as simple as, and which every employee in a corporate goes through is pre-screening, the employee pre-screening when they join an organization. And earlier on there were companies, the supplier base pretty much remains the same, companies like First Advantage, Sterling and all of that. But how the requirement is changing now is that companies are wanting to embed digital in that. So they want to see at which part of the process is a candidate screening, where is he in part of that screening process. And if there are any hiccups or challenges, they need to know where it is stuck with whom, so that they can do some countermeasure planning around that. Also, if we talk about marketing, the requirements from business is to have influencers who can, sort of influence on Twitter, social media, all the handles. Apps need to be there on, either interacting with customers or promoting a certain product. So the entire landscape, even from the demand side, is changing. And that's where, the entire procurement landscape needs to sort of sync up with how the demand is changing. And what we see indeed is that the procurement processes are changing. The organization as a whole, there is a big leap that procurement organizations need to make to be in tune with this entire transformation on the technology, as well as the third-party suppliers who are then catering to all the requirements that we has as procurement professionals. Now, what are some of the benefits that we can say? Of course, the biggest thing we know that there are millions of data points within the procurement space today. And the idea is to sort of bring them together. How can we harness them to bring in insights? So with all of this technology transformation that is happening, the biggest advantage that we are seeing as procurement professionals is that higher visibility is there. We used to operate in silos. I mean, back 2 decades back when I started my procurement journey, there used to be one computer and multiple buyers, working on it. The savings were in individuals' hard drives, and manual reports were being created. But from then to now, I think a lot has changed. And that's at the back of all of the technology transformation that's happening. Data-driven decision-making, data-driven analytics is the buzzword today. And everybody is trying to see how they can utilize the data that they have to sort of make decisions, more informed decisions. We are in a space today where there is a lot of inflationary pressures. And if I were to remember, again, my old days, I would have to probably rely on supplier information or call up, my colleagues in other companies and see how the price trends are moving. But today, there is a lot of information at our fingertips through MI engines. And there are also possibilities, the art of the possible is also, we're thinking of all of these cognitive platforms, wherein as buyers, the platform does the entire thing for us. But again, we're still to reach there. I think there are few companies which are having these cognitive capabilities, but all of that sort of links back to a lot more in terms of, what we need to get there, and I will talk about it in a bit. Then, of course, I talked about data-driven decision-making, higher visibility. These are specific parts of the process, because as procurement, the core KPI for us is cost reduction. It will continue to be cost reduction. But having said that, there are also other things that, the organizations are sort of focusing on, which is on contract and compliance management, better supplier relationship management, having more real-time supplier ratings and Amazon kind of an experience. Also on the, if I were to say the risk management part of things. So, and when I talk of risk management, it is threefold. It's not only supply chain disruption, it will entail price risk, it will entail supplier risk, and it will also entail the supply chain disruption risk. So there are tools in the market, technologies, by virtue of which we can set up a SRM framework and then sort of integrate it in a manner so that we have a real-time feed on the risk management part of things and proactive planning for that. Again, efficient operations, this is where the entire, the P2P part of things sit in. And there is a major transformation happening across P2P. In fact, this was the area which was probably the first ones to be evolving. If I were to talk about the PR to PO or the invoice processing, or even the entire, KPIs around accounts payable to pay our suppliers in time. Responsible sourcing is the buzzword, and each of us as procurement professionals are very, I would say, dedicated to make sure that whatever we are sourcing, it is responsible. Now, it will entail sustainability aspects of things. It also entails things of who are the tier N, tier 1, 2, 3, N kind of supplier bases that we have today. And, how do we scout for the right set of suppliers? So there are tools in the market today which tell us or give us a ready reference of the responsible suppliers, of the diverse suppliers. And finally, last but not the least, it is the procurement ROI. At the back of efficient, agile systems, we are improving the ROI that procurement brings to an organization. Moving on, again, these components that I've laid out is based on my experience of doing some of the digital transformations. And you see today in the market, there's a whole flurry of tools that exist, right? Tools, technologies, platforms. And essentially, if I was to bucketize it, I would say procurement backbone solutions. This is a term that I was introduced to a couple of years back, and I liked it because it's basically, an end-to-end technology on the source to contract and procure to pay. Then there are standalone tools which specialize in a specific area and address a specific problem. Things like contract management tools, things like tail spend management, should cost models, there are specific tools like these. Then there's also, this, I would say, initiative that started across organizations where we're talking about big data. Organizations are trying to create and link the multiple data points that they are having via data lakes and, at the back of the data technologies, and then using them internally to create their reports, dashboards, via multiple visualization engines like ClickSense, Power BI, Tableau, whatever. Yeah. So, and then again, these things, automation. Here we have the robotic process automation and AI/ML, which again, these tools, the systems, they're trying to integrate or bring in AI/ML to the extent possible in, in the areas that they're addressing. And the agile operating model is essentially one of the biggest and the most important pillars of any of the transformation. And what it entails? It entails starting right from the procurement strategy to the, to the processes that we are today on, and how do we want to sort of go to the future. It also has or touches upon the procurement organization structure, because in the new, I'm sure all of us here are largely procurement professionals, and we would have seen how the procurement roles have evolved over the years. So in my earlier times, we used to have a vendor manager, we used to have a cost buyer, and we used to probably have an indirect sourcing buyer. But today, in procurement, we are having new roles created which are on transformation, which are on digital, which are on big data. So, and then moving on, in addition to the organization, it's also about the capability development. So when we talk about an agile operating model, we have to see what is our capability today, what is the future role that we are wanting or envisaging to be on, what is the gap, and what are the trainings that we need to sort of bridge the gap. And today's time, we are also having to hire new talent, such as data scientists, should our organization be aspiring to do these things in-house. So that's really the meat of any technology transformation, and these are all the aspects which one will need to touch upon. Now I'll talk about few case studies that I have seen again in my experience, and again this is a very broad area. I'm sure each of you would have different experiences in terms of what you've seen. So just sharing few case studies based on my experience. Spend analytics in my early days in consulting, or even my days in, as a procurement person. Spend analytics used to be having multiple, multiple thousands of rows or even lakhs of rows to be analyzed and seen that where the opportunity lies. But today, there are tools by virtue of which, which use a certain logic. And as a human, I said that, it's a human plus machine age that we are in. So as a human, you need to just classify a few rows. Then the tool will take the same logic and replicate it over multiple number of rows. And it will also give you the confidence level of the mapping, so that you know that how accurate the spend analytics that, has been run is, and, what would be the insights coming out of it. Other thing on shoot cost models, they've been there for a while, but then again, there are tools now in the market. The speaker just before me, talking about the direct material space, I know there are certain tools wherein, and again, they may be more matured for certain markets, because in direct materials, the nuances are very different from one industry to another. And that's where, getting all the data points in place and getting the benchmarking information, so to say, from the BOM, the impacts of raw material, the impacts of profits, overheads, margins, and sort of building that up, but they exist. They exist for direct materials, they exist for indirect materials. Category-specific insights, I'd like to share some of the things that I'm seeing or the trends that I'm seeing. So facility services, one of the core key categories in the indirect space, wherein, so far if you had to see the progress of a facility in terms of how it's coming up, you would have to actually physically go and visit that site and see how that's coming up. But today we have metaverse being deployed by the suppliers to sort of give us a real-time view, and these are cloud-based logins, yeah? By virtue of which you can, sitting in your office, see how the facility is actually coming up. Other things on the translations category, indirects again, wherein, when we have multiple documents that need to be translated, essentially you'd need to pay for every document that's translated, but today they use a machine learning capability to have a memory of, what you've already as an organization sort of, have had translated. So then you pay only for the incremental words that are being translated. So by doing that, you're actually saving a cost that you would otherwise have given on the translation of that document. Another thing here that comes to my mind is contingent workers. This is one category, or temp labor, right? Most of the organizations would deploy a category like these or resources like these. But there is a lot of ambiguity, or I would say lack of visibility in terms of when the person was onboarded, what is, what's the price or the cost that we are paying for them. But today there are tools in the market by virtue of which you could classify an agency worker versus a SOW worker versus the outsourced worker. And also there are different capabilities that the tool has in terms of capturing the level of information across each of these worker types. Yeah. Moving on the savings forecast, this is one of the most, I would say, important aspects of the procurement function. And historically, we've seen that every category buyer would have the savings in their respective, computers or laptops or whatever. But today we have tools by virtue of which people or buyers across the enterprise can sort of create a forecast view of the projects that they're envisaging in a year, and then they can keep on moving the savings forecast across the project stages. And from a high level or a LT level view at the very top, there are also, I would say, confidence levels or implementation levels which are deployed then on the savings to then say that what is the actual consolidated saving number. So this solves a big problem for us, which was historically there, that what is my projection for the year looking like? Yeah, by virtue of having something like this, at the very top, we know for global organizations, what is the spend number that I'm targeting towards? Again, program management, we have workflow tools here, wherein increasingly we are seeing that the future of procurement from an organization perspective is moving to more smaller centralized teams who are doing the sourcing, while vanilla people sitting in the local markets and the categories doing either the stakeholder management or the business partnering. But essentially it is this small team of people who are doing the sourcing. And this is where these workflow tools become very important, even in the shared services setup where people work across multiple markets, across multiple categories, multiple projects, because this gives a visibility of not only on which stage of the project we are on, but also as a manager or as a people's manager, one has visibility of what are the similar kinds of projects that we may be doing in a certain region or a certain category. And by virtue of knowing that, we have the opportunity to, sort of synergize for better volume bundling, better suppliers, and also better capabilities. Okay, then chatbots, I think again, these are there on, is the time up? Okay. So chatbots, I think everybody should know about them. We have for the help desk functions, and it's again one of the things to make or easy retrieval of information, but again something which is in nascent stages, and the future or the robustness of it will depend upon how do we manage our entire data. Now, things to watch out for, very clearly, every organization is different. Every organization has a different appetite and priority. So it's very important that there is no size fits all for a digital transformation or a technology transformation. We need to know on what stage of the maturity curve are we on digital. And then we need to have our aspirations or the target set up. And accordingly, then we need to carve out, how do we need to move on from where we are today on a 3 to 5 year tenure. And again, this is something that I've heard often, and I've also seen as a procurement person, is to make sure that we are improving the user experience. And by users, I mean not only procurement professionals, but also the business partners whom we are working with. While we say that, we have catalogs and, we have chatbots, but unless and until the users find it easy to sort of locate a certain, catalog, the adoption rates are going to be a challenge. It is a challenge, it will continue to be a challenge, and hence it will be very important to sort of make sure that when we are carving out our digital strategy, we are looking at clearly where or how is my user operating today and how is the future going to change things for him or her. Again, change management at the very core of any transformation applies here as well. Making sure that all the related parties and the landscape is right here in terms of internal processes, the demand side, the procurement suppliers, they're all aligned, and understand the impact of how the transformation and what the transformation essentially means. So that's all from my side. Any questions? Happy to take them.
Thank you, Aakanksha. That was a good presentation. I just want to ask one question. You spoke about contingent workers, and contingent workers are the reality.
Sorry, you're not very audible. Are you talking about contingent workers?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
So I just wanted to know that how is the compliance aspect being taken care from in a contingent workers, because there are a lot of statutory regulations that come with it. So have you come across a tool that takes care of, which also helps to manage the contingent workers and also helps you to manage the compliance?
Right. So I think that's a very important aspect on the contingent worker side, and in fact that really is the pain point, because more often than not, HR is onboarding somebody or a certain business user is onboarding somebody and the person is continuing. Nobody really knows that the tenure has expired and the person is still continuing. There are also things where you are probably having somebody to in a job enhancement role, on a temporary role, and you're paying them consulting rates, right? There's nobody who's checking them, because you're probably having somebody to do project management, but essentially you are ending up paying them the LCRs that are there for consulting folks. So these are the pain points which have sort of stemmed the need to have a tool like this. So how the tool really works is that the first stage itself is to identify the worker type. So like I said, I talked about 3 worker types broadly which are there. One is the agency worker, which is the temp labor, so to say. 2 is the SOW worker, which is largely people working on our IT consulting or management consulting kind of work, which is time or material or fixed fee depending upon the work or the engagement model that we have. And then 3rd is the outsourced worker, which is largely the managed service providers. So for example, if we are outsourcing our P2P operations to somebody, then that's the managed service provider. And the level of information that is there in these tools is very different depending upon the worker types that have been classified. Yeah? So, and I can share that in case of agency worker and SOW worker information, the information is far more detailed in terms of capturing the name of the resource, the manager name, what is the start point and end point, what is the the cost rate that we are giving, what is the work that the person is doing, and if the worker, if that duration is sort of exceeded, then the access of the person will be blocked in the system, unless of course the manager, before the due date, the manager approves for an extension. So these are some of the compliance checks that are put in place to make sure that things are not falling out. Does that answer your question?
Yep. I have one question, Aakanksha. Yep. Thank you for the good presentation. You have touched upon screening the resources while hiring. So now the biggest challenge in the IT recruitment, we've been seeing. So any information how to mitigate such big challenge? An IT resource, he takes an offer letter, but no guarantee unless he joins. So any thought about it?
Right. So, but is this a challenge only with IT resources? Because I have seen this challenge with other resources as well, right? I mean, when I was joining the new company, the first question I was asked is, all right, do you have another offer letter? Can you share that with us? Right? Because the idea is that what is it that the person is worth in the market, and I mean, you just do the plus delta to that. But having said that, technology is definitely an area of, which is in the need, and I think it's the individual's aspiration versus what the company has to offer, and if that's sort of aligned, I guess that's the only way for us to not lose out on people very quickly. Again, there is a dearth in the market, and there's also a lot on the UI UX designers, right, today, because we are also talking about the apps. Everybody needs things on apps, on the finger touch So all of that is in I would say, lesser availability. The demand is more. But like I said, I think the aspiration of the person needs to marry with what the organization has to offer. And that's the only way for us to maybe retain and get those talents.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your time and presentation.